All right, everyone. We have Coach Megan Hattori, Assistant Director of Sports Performance at Duke University, with us. We connected very recently. We're getting this page turned around nice and quickly up for them so they can start to bring in more interest from not just North Carolina, but from around the country. So very excited to have Megan with us here. I'm going to turn the mic over straight away and ask her to tell us a little bit more about herself, how she ended up at Duke, and what were her developmental steps along the way before she got there.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate you doing this for us. Like I said, I'm Megan Hattori. Been at Duke for going on 6 years now. I work with our women's soccer and volleyball teams. I'm also the director of our internship program. I've been here 6 years. Time flies when you're having fun. But it's been very fortunate to be here with and work with our staff. Prior to Duke, I was at Harvard University for 2 years. Worked with a bunch of different sports. Great learning experience for me there. Prior to that, I was at Southeast Missouri State. I was the shadowing experience, was an intern, GA, and was was an assistant coach at Southeast. So shout out to Southeast and Coach Ryan Johnson for giving me my start in this field. I wouldn't be where I am without them. So I'm very grateful to everybody at Southeast for helping me to get to where I am today.
Cool. And were you a previous college athlete? I didn't ask this beforehand.
Yeah, so I played softball in college. I didn't play my senior year though, which allowed me to do my shadowing at Southeast. I transferred from Lipscomb University to Southeast, decided not to play my senior year, and got into strength and conditioning, and here I am.
Yeah, it's cool. I remember seeing actually when you worked at Harvard, you worked with the women's rugby team. Is that right?
Yeah.
Rugby's close to my heart. I played growing up for, I don't know, 19 years or something like that. It's cool to see college teams in the US. How was your experience working with women's rugby?
It was awesome. I had a great time. There's so many different levels of abilities. So like I had national team kids and walk-on kids. So I got to do a lot of different things with the fairly large team. And they actually talked me into playing rugby. So for a summer when I was there, I played rugby. I loved it. It was great. It was a good time.
Cool. What position did you play? Do you remember?
I was a winger.
Winger. Okay. So you're speedy. That's good. Nice. Very cool. Yeah, ish. Maybe a little bit. Cool. We didn't go over this beforehand, but I did want to ask, for young coaches who are watching often, it's like nice to hear about the other staff members that are there, because obviously they're not just going to interact with you. So maybe in 2 minutes or less, could you give us a rundown of like the staff that are there, and maybe like one thing about them, maybe something that's like, this is for this person, this coach, they're really good at doing this, or this is their kind of area of expertise?
Yeah. So very exciting. We've been fortunate enough to add a couple staff members in the past couple of years. So currently we have eight staff members, 7 full-time, 1 part-time. So it's awesome. I've never been on a staff this large before. But so our director of this room, Dan Perlmutter, great guy. I recently had a son, and he's just awesome about like take care of your family, do what you need to do. So Dan's really good at managing us as a staff, but also being very supportive from that state. I'm just going to go through the offices.
Yeah.
And then Coach Carl Christensen is our associate director. Carl's really good at keeping everybody on task. So he works with a couple of our larger teams. So he also is the assistant for the internship program. I think he does a really great job of helping prep our interns for like job applications. So going over resumes and when we do our mock interviews, he's great at helping prep interns for that. Let's see. Coach Jordan Barr is another one of our staff members. He's very analytical, so he's great at breaking small things down. He and Coach John McNeamer, who share the same office, I think they just sit in there and like pull little things apart. But they're both awesome as far as like seeing the little details. So I think those two guys that share that office, they're great to just sit down and talk to about different movements, or, hey, I'm having this issue with an athlete. What do you guys think? And then Coach Nicole, she brings great energy. She's her specialty. She's very organized. So I think when her teams come in, boom, 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 this is what we got. This is what we're doing. And here we go. Coach Josh is new to the staff. So he joined us like right before the start of the semester. So I'm still figuring out Coach Josh. But we recently got the VMAX Pro system, and he's been all over that. So he was teaching me new stuff today about it. So yeah, learning from him in that department. And then Coach Erica is our part-time staff member. Still learning her as well. She just recently started. But again, she's younger than the rest of the staff, not in a bad way. Like, our staff's very diverse as far as age, but she's the youngest one on staff, so she brings a little sass with her group. So it's fun. I always say the best part about Duke is that they get to learn from so many different coaches with so many different coaching styles. I think when I came up with my GA and assistant, like, I came from the same tree, so everybody thought the same way and everybody had the same philosophy, which is great because you're all on the same page. But at the same time, like, it didn't challenge my thought process. So I think here it's awesome because you get to think as an intern. Like, you can talk to Coach Josh, you can talk to Coach Erica, you can talk to Coach Carl, and get so many different ways to think about it. But you as an intern, you can critically think and be like, okay, I like this, I'm gonna put this in my toolbox. I don't really care for that, so I'm not gonna hold on to that. So I think that's really cool. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but our staff's great. And everybody generally wants to try to help the interns become better, so that they can help develop the field.
Yeah, no, don't apologize for going off on a tangent. I'm actually glad we asked that question and had that discussion. That's super important. I think it's something that intern coaches, young coaches, sometimes struggle to realize, is the diversity of the coaches in front of them, and everything is just kind of taken for granted. Maybe sessions appear the same because they're all happening in the same room in a similar order. But when you look at the finer details, not necessarily of maybe the exercise selection, but how the sessions are delivered, or what the kind of cultural backing to a session looks like. Because a men's golf team might look very different to a men's basketball team session in there. I loved the big smile that came across your face when you said Coach Nicole's name. I'm not going to ask why, but I'm just intrigued.
I said a lot of good energy.
Yeah, cool, excellent. Okay, so let's dive into the program in a bit more depth then. So for a young coach coming to Duke, what can they expect to be doing on a daily basis with you?
So yeah, it depends on which option they apply for. So based on that option is kind of the expectations that we have for them. But from a daily standpoint, we try to be flexible as far as hours. Typically, we try to keep it around 20-25 per week. So depending on how that spreads out across the team, we've got first teams in usually about 6 till about 11 or so is fairly busy. Middle of the day, we'll usually have our meetings or training or our curriculum info. And then things usually pick up again around 3, and it'll go till about 6 or 7, depending on the day. But again, we try to do a really good job of monitoring the hours. So like, hey, if you have a early team heavy day, we try to get you out a little bit early. So we try to make sure that you're not here all day every day. But the expectation is about that 20 to 25 hours, however it breaks up. We'll typically have 2 intern meetings a week. So like this semester, it's been Tuesday, Thursday, and we'll have a practical portion. So like, hey, we're going over PowerPoints and general philosophies and all that. And then the day 2 will be practical. So we're putting it into play. So we're talking about conditioning. We'll go over the methods thought processes, things like that. And then on the second day, we're actually going to do a conditioning session, so that they kind of have an idea of like, this is how we structure it, this is what it feels like. Because it's one thing to read a book and go over presentations, but it's a whole nother thing to actually do it yourself. So that's why we really like that practical portion. Typically the day one, that's going to be with myself and Coach Carl. The day two, the other staff will take a topic and go with it. So that's kind of the outline of the curriculum. But yeah, day to day, it again just kind of depends. But like I said, we try to have you either morning heavy or evening heavy, and middle of the day, the expectation is that you're there for meetings, excuse me, meetings, training, or something to that nature.
Yeah, gotcha. And you mentioned those 3 different tracks. I think it's important to dive into those. So would you mind going over, your credit track, your CSCS, and your SCCC stuff?
Yeah. So here at Duke, we like to be able to pay our interns somehow. So we have 3 different options for interns that want to apply. So the first one is class credit. With that, you're receiving class credit from your school to come here and do an internship. So I think most exercise science departments have like a capstone their final semester to where they're doing their internship for class credit. So this would equate to that. Now for the class credit, we ask that you're here for 1 semester. So that could be fall, spring, or summer. The second option is the CSCS track. So with that, that's again a 1 semester commitment, but that's someone pursuing the CSCS. So you haven't taken it yet, but this curriculum will prep you for it. So the end of your time here, you'll take the test and we will pay for it. So that's the compensation is we're paying for the fees associated with your test. And then the last track is the CSCCA track. So with that, that's a 2 semester commitment. So that we only offer in the fall and spring. So that way at the end of the spring, you can take the practical portion at the conference. But I'm an approved mentor through the CSCCA. So you'll go under me for your internship hours, and we'll pay for the fees associated with taking the test. So you think about it, it's it's a pretty good deal. End of it, you'll get you should be getting your certification, and you get tons of hands-on coaching. So those are our 3 tracks in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great. No, I love that because there's directionality and conviction to what they're doing. So a young coach says, I really would like to. I know the CSCS is the most widely acknowledged accreditation, not just for collegiate, but outside of that, if I wanted to pursue that. So that's what I'm going to go for. So that's great. And how would they indicate to you on their application which one they want to go for? Would you like that in the email subject? Would you like that inside their application material? Where should they state which track they're going for?
Subject's always easier. So if they just put John Smith applying for like CSCCA track or whatever, that's would be the easiest for me. Yeah.
Great. Love that. I really hope that more internships do something like that, because I think that's really, really neat. Because like you say, unfortunately, we typically don't have large budgets to be able to support internship programs. Unfortunately, we can't pay a lot of intern programs unless it's with the federal work study grants and stuff like that. But to be able to pay for certifications and kind of get their foot on the ladder, that's a neat way of doing things. So good idea. Okay.
Yeah. And we also just got, this semester is the first time, but we got access so our interns can eat at our athlete training table. So that's big. It's a free dinner, and from what I've heard, like you can get a couple dinners out of what you get. So that's an extra little tidbit that we're trying to help any way we can. So that was a big win for us in adding that for our interns.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll come and intern for you. Free dinner sounds great. Saves a lot of time as well. No, perfect. Really cool. All right, so let's dive into the curriculum, maybe in a bit more detail here and there. And obviously, you can just pick out 1 or 2 pieces. We're going to talk about tech as well, so maybe if you wanted to speak on that too. But what areas do you think you develop your coaches particularly well in, or maybe you receive really good feedback every year from those young coaches saying, hey, like the resume stuff you were talking about, or the professional portfolios, I really feel like I developed in those areas. So maybe you could talk more a bit about that kind of those kind of pieces.
Yeah. So I think the number one thing that we try to do and that we pride ourselves on with our internship is that you get a lot of hands-on coaching.
Mhm.
So we keep our internship numbers fairly low. So the max that we'll have are four, and we haven't had that for a while. So typically it's two or three per semester. So you get a lot of hands-on coaching. So I think to me that's super valuable, especially moving on. You're going to get develop your coach's eye, coaching cues. You're going to get to know a ton of athletes. You're going to have more teams on your resume. You're going to get to work with, all the different coaches on our staff. And most internships, depending on where you go, you're standing in the corner spotting. So here, like I said, as soon as you display that you're competent and you're capable of coaching and cueing, like we want you on the floor. Like we need the help. That's why we have not a vigorous, but a fairly challenging interview process, because we want people that want to be in this profession. So I think number one is you get a lot of on-floor coaching.
Mhm.
I think in another area, like I said, is hopefully critical thinking. So we have, like I said, 8 staff members, so they can pick the brains and think about like, oh, it's not everybody has to do this. But you get to sit down and talk with. Part of the curriculum is you have interviews with each one of our coaches. One, to get to know them as people, because that's you might not get to spend as much time with every coach as you'd like, but get to know them as a person, their coaching philosophy, and their journey. So I think that's big, is you get to connect with all of our different sports performance coaches. Let's see, the last piece I wanted to touch on for the internship. um, um, I think we treat them as a part of the staff, because they are. So it's not like, oh, interns, like you go away, we're having a meeting. Like you're very much involved in our program. So as soon as you accept and you sign and you pass the background check, you're a part of our staff. So we're talking to you about what you're seeing on the floor. You're included in our staff meetings. Excuse me. So I think that's a benefit that not a lot of interns get to have. Again, depending on the university, but we try to be very inclusive here, and have them a part of our staff.
Yeah, that's great, because I think often, obviously, the value, just like you talked about, the value of a lot of internship experiences is in that experiential learning of getting your reps in as a coach, and being able to deliver cueing and provide safety and what have you. So the basics, but a lot of the other value comes from those conversations that happen in the voids between training, or in staff meetings, where maybe there's a difficult conversation that's been had with a full-time staff member and a head sport coach, and the young intern coach is going to be privy to what the conversation was and how it went and how it could have gone better or whatever. And so they just get to learn ahead of time before they themselves are faced with something like that. So I think it's great. And I agree. We do exactly the same thing here, in terms of, we make it very clear to our young coaches that you are an extension of our staff. You're part of us. And the sooner you begin acting like an assistant coach on our staff, the sooner the athletes will respect you in that way, and the sooner you will land a role as an assistant coach somewhere, if that's what you eventually want to do. So yeah, the respect we have for young coaches, and the respect that you guys have for young coaches is paramount. And I think that's really important. Excellent. Okay, so speaking of these young coaches that come through our departments, we obviously want to help them to move on eventually, and to land their first full-time role. So maybe you could touch on one or two former intern coaches that have come through Duke since you've been there. Talk about where they are now and why you think they were successful at getting there, based on what they were like when they were at Duke.
Put me on the spot. No, we've had a lot of great interns come through. We've had a handful that come here and say, no, this isn't for me, and are out of the profession. But first person, or we had a class that was really good a few years ago. So Juan, who is on the website, he didn't have a lot of experience on his resume, but he came from a program that we've had previous experience with. So we interviewed him. presented himself very well in his interview. So he seemed like a good person, intelligent. He just was a good person. So, but he came on as a part of our staff as class credit for his master's program. Did an awesome job. He asked good questions. He went above and beyond. So, thinking ahead of the coach. So it's like, hey, this is what's on the program today. I can set this up or get this prepped. So he did awesome job. So we talked him into staying for another semester. So he ended up getting his CSCCA certification. So he was in the fall for class credit, and then he ended up staying, and he took a certification at the end of it, or at the end of the spring. Did a great job. He got a GA position at Wyoming. Was there for a little bit, but then he got a position with the Cavaliers, and he's done great there. I think he's like the head of I forget his exact title, but he just got a title bump to head of like sports science. I'm a little fuzzy on the title exactly, but yeah, he was just a great person, and he was curious. So I think for us, our internship gives the outlines on the big rocks. But if you are interested in a topic, it's your curiosity to delve deeper. So like we'll show you how things work. We'll take you through things, but it's up to you to make the internship what you want. So I think Juan did a really good job of that. And then Brian Jackson, who was another one of his internship classmates, he was former military, came in for the CSCCA track, excuse me. And same thing, like presented himself very well, was curious, like thought ahead, was involved. So I think another big thing is, the weight room's great. But I think it's easy to be a weight room coach. So again, another thing is getting out to practices, going out to speed sessions, like, showing initiative that, hey, I care about, you guys more than just my weight room assignments. So I think, those guys did that. They went above and beyond. We've had a lot of great coaches. So it's kind of hard to pick them out, but those two guys I know just stand out, just as great people. And Brian's currently working with football at Virginia Tech. So both really good guys. Did a great job for us.
Gotcha. Cool. No, big lesson there. Make yourself indispensable as a young coach. I think sometimes, I know I did when I was a younger coach, you kind of lack the maturity to think that, or maybe it's that kind of concept of imposter syndrome, where you're like, why should anyone listen to me? This is my first role. I don't really know what I'm doing. And you kind of adopt that role. But if you make yourself indispensable and just do the little things, like you said, of being available or being curious or asking questions or thinking ahead, going above and beyond, then you're going to turn heads. And ultimately, I'm sure, as you guys did, you supported them heavily when they were looking to move on, and said, this person is really, really good. We asked them to stay for another semester because they were that good. So that's important too. It's interesting that Juan went to Wyoming and then into the NBA, because we had a former intern, and maybe they know each other, a guy called Joey Davey, who was an intern coach here. He went to Wyoming, was a full-timer, I think, or maybe he did his GA there as well. This may have been before Juan, but now he's also in the NBA with Memphis. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Well, cool. All right, so let's talk about, just to wrap things up, any young coach who's still watching this video and they're interested in an internship with Duke. What would stand out to you on a resume or a cover letter? What kind of coach are you looking for? What kind of application material would you hope would land on your desk and say, wow, this is a really interesting person. I'd like to get to know more and potentially bring them on.
Yeah. So, the resumes come to me, so I'll look them over. Typically we like to have some experience. So we understand that not everybody's going to be able to have, like, a huge background in sports performance, but again, it kind of depends on the tracks. So
Mhm.
like if you're CSCCA, we expect you to have at least an internship under your belt. Class credit CSCS, that we're a little bit more flexible with as far as expectations. But some type of experience. I always think it goes a long way as well. If you have someone reach out about you, so like, hey, like so and so did a great job for me. Usually if someone is taking the time to tell me that they did a good job, I'll send their resume right along.
Mhm.
But I think those are the big things, is like someone taking the time to reach out and say you're a good person. That's going to get you a phone call. And then, more experience is always helpful. If you have, waiting tables, I understand everybody has to work, but can we find time to do some type of something related to sports performance to just have a little bit of knowledge? Because, like I said, when you come in, we expect you to coach, so you
Mhm.
need something to kind of give you a little bit of a foundation. I think
Yeah,
those are the two big things.
absolutely. I'm going to get on my soapbox here a little bit, but I think it's important for young coaches to recognize that if you're applying to a program like Duke, or a program like Pitt, or somewhere that has developed a lot of coaches, they're a prestigious university, have a great athletic department, you're going to be one of many resumes that lands on a desk. And so you need to be able to separate yourself from the others. And a great way, just as you mentioned, of doing that is having somebody else reach out on your behalf, because it gives you credibility. It brings your name to the top of the pile time and time again. And obviously you have to have a backbone to stand on to make sure that your resume does actually support what somebody's saying about you. But yeah, I absolutely agree. The number of times I've had somebody reach out to me about a incoming intern coach, I can probably count on one hand. But when they have come in, we've took them on pretty much every time. Yeah, because you're right. It really does give credibility. That's great. Perfect. Well, Megan, really appreciate your time. Obviously, anyone who's watching this video can find all the application details about the current semester at Duke, and be sure to mention which track obviously you're applying for, the class credit, the CSCS, or the CSCCA track. Again, great options there, and an ability to get your first foot on the ladder. So that's really awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much. We'll obviously talk more in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. This is awesome. Great resource for young up and coming coaches.